Energy reaches each of us every day. In our homes, our cars, in the palm of our hands. But even with energy so close, unless you see what's out there, you might miss a world of possibilities. America's energy. Our natural gas and oil resources, made, moved, and improved every day by 11 million men and women working tirelessly behind the scenes across the nation. We gear up. We show up. We protect what's here. We shape our future. But to us, this is just a Wednesday. Out here, out here, out here. We work to make smarter, better energy. Energy that we can rely on as our need for it grows. Tackling today's complex problems together and solving tomorrow's big challenges. So we want to invite you to experience the solutions that are out here.
Appalachia, a region of America known for its grit, for its steel and coal, and for powering America into what we now know as modern life. When you think of America's energy future, this might not be what you think of. But I'm standing in the single largest natural gas producing region in the world. Nearly 1/3 of all the natural gas produced in America happened here last year. And 1 in 3 U.S. households depend on natural gas. I'm Megan Bloomgren from the American Petroleum Institute, and today we'll bring you a first-hand look at how America is making, moving, and improving our energy. Energy. It blends into the background of our daily lives. But without it, life would be fundamentally different. Fortunately, here in America, we have abundant resources, and we produce and use many different types of energy. The most widely used source is oil, followed by natural gas. Together, oil and natural gas make up about 2/3 of the energy we use every day. Oil is used in transportation and to make thousands of household products. And natural gas plays a role in every single sector of our economy, from farming and technology to retail and healthcare. All around us, from vast underground resources to the intricate network that moves energy to where it's needed, to the brilliant minds and hard workers in our communities. American energy is at work for us. In 2022, we felt firsthand just how important energy is. We saw rising inflation and higher costs for goods and services, the first major conflict in Europe since the end of the Second World War, and a serious global energy crunch. Americans support producing more of our own energy resources here, at home, than ever before. Here in the scenic foothills, amazing progress is quietly underway to do just that. New wells developed, new products invented, jobs created, and thousands of miles of pipelines moving energy. There's more work to be done, but American energy accepts the challenge. Over the course of today's State of American Energy broadcast, you'll meet industry talent and see tech breakthroughs like the cutting-edge emission reduction technologies being perfected in laboratories, or the way American natural gas is changing and improving the global energy mix, and how more infrastructure can deliver more energy from where it's produced to where it's most needed. All of this progress is a reminder that the solution is here, with a skilled American workforce standing shoulder to shoulder to keep our country strong. From systems engineers to truck drivers to biologists, our sector employs the best and brightest, supplying jobs that support communities across the country. Today, you'll hear from experts about how they're shaping our energy future and what's needed to ensure America's success. Because something extraordinary is underway here in West Virginia and in neighboring Pennsylvania and Ohio. But it's not just happening here. Across the country, America's natural gas and oil is fueling energy progress and powering a brighter future. Welcome. This is the 2023 State of American Energy.
Heart replacements, contact lenses, shoes, tents, tires, heat for your home, fuel at the pump, and even makeup and cell phones. They all start from a barrel of oil. The world consumes 100 million barrels of oil every single day. So what does it actually take to put American energy to use in all these products? It starts out here. America's natural gas and oil are at work for us.
We're sitting on it, we can do it safely, we can do it efficiently. And with that, it's going to benefit Americans and the world.
Crude oil and natural gas are mixtures of chemical compounds that form complex molecular structures. There are a variety of techniques to transform these molecule mixtures into energy that's usable. Let's take natural gas.
To use a layman's terms, they're actually compressing it and pushing it to the plants. And at that point, that's where we actually process and separate the gas. As people would know, methane, which is your component that you would cook with, generate electricity, etc.
For oil, it's a little different. A barrel of oil contains 42 gallons used to make gasoline, diesel, and home heating oil primarily. U.S. refiners each year produce more than 135 billion gallons of gasoline and over 60 billion gallons of on-road diesel fuel. Last year, refiners upped their operations to make more fuels as markets tightened. Once oil has been turned into its end-use product, it has to be shipped. Tankers, railroads, and pipelines are proven, efficient, and economical means of moving supply to where it's needed most.
The main way that we get energy to people is through pipelines. They're safe, reliable, efficient. It's really important that you have that conduit to get the energy to the right spot.
Pipelines, one of the safest ways to transport energy, are monitored by trained professionals and state-of-the-art control centers.
We move large volumes of materials continuously 24/7, 365 days of the year. With that, you look out of a beautiful view. There might be pipelines under the ground that you don't even see that, are quietly operating under you, supplying the gas that's needed.
Out here, America's natural gas and oil companies are making modern life possible. Out here, we're moving more reliable and affordable energy into more homes. Out here, we're moving energy produced to some of the highest environmental standards in the world. Out here, we're moving more affordable energy to communities across the country, all across the country, moving, improving life. Because the solution is here.
Well, hi, everybody. Great to be here in Midland, Texas. We have an incredible group here today made up of industry employees, those that work in the great American oil and gas industry here in the Permian Basin. But we also have small business owners and people who've benefited from this industry here in Midland and, of course, the broader Permian Basin community. So earlier this year, I actually wrote a letter to President Biden, and I was asking him if he would come to the most prolific energy basins in the United States. I asked him to go offshore, and I asked him to go to Alaska, and I asked him to come here to the prolific Permian Basin. And what I really wanted him to see was, and I wanted him to meet folks who are actually working this industry and people who've benefited from this industry. So if you have a message for Washington, what is it?
We live in our communities, our children live in these communities, and it's hard to get the message out to the nation of all of the benefits that we provide the nation, what we contribute to our communities, where we live in our communities.
We often say that you can't believe it until you see it. So I think the more we can get all of those folks out here to see our way of life. And as you mentioned, we live here. We're not going anywhere. This is our community. Why would we ever do anything to bring something bad upon our neighbors and ourselves? So I think as many people as we can as we can educate and get out here to visibly see what's happening, I think that really changes their opinion.
Come to my business and let me take you to a safety meeting and see, 60 employees that are there every day working hard, 12 hours a day, and then also come ride with me and let me show you how safe we are and how environmental friendly we are and what it does to a family, what it does to a household, what it does to a community.
Good morning. We are talking all things natural gas. So I'm Dustin Meyer. I'm the Vice President of Natural Gas Markets at the American Petroleum Institute. What is it? Where does it come from? What do we use it for? What role does it have in energy security for us here in the United States and around the world? And what role does it have in meeting the dual future challenge of how do we meet existing energy demand and rising demand while still simultaneously reducing emissions? Let's get started. In the US, about 40% of natural gas goes to power generation. About 30% of it goes to residential use, so think in your cooking, but primarily for heating during cold weather. And then the third would be industrial applications. So that is how gas in the United States is used. And natural gas is just an inherently much cleaner molecule. So when you use natural gas to generate electricity, you get about a 50% emissions reduction from the GHG side, from the greenhouse gas side, as opposed to coal. But it actually extends beyond that. We justifiably spend most of our time talking about carbon dioxide emissions, right? GHG emissions. But there's also a huge reduction in SOx and NOx and particulate matter. Natural gas offers a sharp reduction, in many instances a near total elimination of those types of emissions. It creates a very flexible, reliable energy market that ultimately, at the end of the day, we as consumers can rely on. Liquefied natural gas, as the name suggests, it's the same molecule. It's still natural gas. It's still methane. It's just effectively run through a massive refrigerator that brings it down to a liquid form. When you move it into a liquid form, that means it's much more energy dense. That means that you can ship it on a vessel across the ocean in a way that wouldn't really be feasible if you just left it at a gas. We started exporting liquefied natural gas back in 2016. We are now the world's largest exporter of liquefied natural gas. It is very important to remember how we got here. It wasn't that long ago when not only was the United States a major importer of LNG, we were actually projected by many to be the world's largest importer of LNG. What we're looking at here is the fairly dramatic rise in exports of liquefied natural gas from the United States. You can see those started in early 2016 and have increased steadily all the way to the present day. Russia has always been the largest supplier of natural gas to Europe. About 40% of Europe's natural gas supply has always come from Russia. So it's a really bad situation, but what's important to remember is that it actually could be a lot worse. The reason why it's not worse is largely due to the role that US natural gas, and especially American liquefied natural gas, or LNG, is playing in displacing that Russian pipeline gas. US LNG flows to Europe have increased significantly. That fundamental shift, it didn't happen overnight, but it also didn't happen by accident. This was the result of decades of innovation in the industry. That's what enabled all of this to happen. That's what enabled the United States to now play the role that it is playing in global energy markets. We really do face a dual challenge when we think about the future of energy. How do we continue to meet existing and future demand for energy of all forms while reducing emissions in a manner consistent with our climate targets? Natural gas really does have an important role to play in doing this, and here's why. One of the largest success stories that we have is the emissions reductions that we've seen in the US power sector. And what you can see is that over the last 15 years, those emissions have actually declined quite precipitously. And when we talk about renewable energy, we're primarily talking about the use of renewable energy in the power sector. So as wind and solar generation fluctuates wildly on a minute-to-minute basis, it's really only natural gas that can balance that electricity generation and ensure that these grids operate reliably. I think that many folks in the policymaking community perhaps are starting to understand is if you restrict and limit the availability and the abundance of natural gas, you really do set yourself up into a precarious position. Going forward, we're gonna have to invest in new supply, in building new infrastructure. We should be eyes open about the challenge ahead. The United States is uniquely blessed in terms of our energy resources. We have to remember that while there are so many global benefits, the primary beneficiary of our development of our natural gas resources and supplying this abundant natural gas is the United States. It lowers costs for consumers. It supports a tremendous amount of job creation across the United States, and it offers tremendous economic benefits to local communities all around the country.
The industry is so proactive when it doesn't have to be, but it's proactive because it wants to be. It wants to do what is right by its communities and everything that is on top of the glorious rock that produces the wealth of energy. It is industry leaders, it is academics, it is community members coming together and noting, okay, is there an issue here? How do we all do better? How do we work together? And how do we ensure that innovation is always in the forefront to solving any burden that we may have so that the industry can continue to flourish?
Another thing to bring up with innovation, not just downhole, but also on the surface, we have been, as an industry as a whole, teaming up together. All the companies around have been meeting to figure out what is the best way to minimize and mitigate methane emissions and CO2 emissions. And so we are each holding each other accountable well above the standard of what the government is trying to push. And so I think that's another thing to bring up, is that America continues to bring energy into the industry and into the world in the cleanest way possible. And so I don't see why we wouldn't continue to grow that out here versus anywhere else.
I'm Dr. Aaron Padilla. During the 20 years of my career, I've traveled all over the world, working in 30 countries, and I've seen firsthand how natural gas and oil companies are innovating every day to improve our operations. There are thousands of groundbreaking ideas, technologies, and methodologies that have been developed over the past decades that have made the energy we consume today much cleaner. And the one thing that makes all of them possible? Curiosity. American natural gas and oil companies attract some of the brightest minds, people who are curious, people who want to challenge the status quo, solve problems, and change the way we work for the better. You are about to meet a few of the scientists, engineers, and innovators that are answering one of the most important questions facing our society today. How do we do more with less? How do we create more energy but do so with fewer emissions and a smaller environmental footprint? Join me as we meet some of the men and women whose curiosity is propelling them to create amazing solutions and improve the energy that powers our lives. Here in Houston, Texas, is where our journey starts. Few places in the world are more important to energy production than America's and the world's energy capital. But what's happening here is just one of many places fostering the innovation that is fueling a technology revolution. We are doing more with less, leveraging innovation to rewrite how energy production and emissions reductions coexist.
The dual challenge that we are facing today is our responsibility to the people, so meeting the world's growing energy demands, and then also to the planet, which is to reduce emissions and leave as small of an impact on the world as possible. My name is Lucy Shia, and I'm the manager of the data and analytics team in our Gulf of Mexico asset here at Hess Corporation. My team supports the drilling and completions team, the subsurface and the production engineering teams in the Gulf of Mexico. And what we do is we build out analytics tools based on the data that's collected out in the field and help them make faster, better, and data-driven decisions. As new technologies come to light, the tools that we use to execute those processes also increase efficiency. Then as innovation increases, you re-standardize that process using your new tools. And so it just becomes this ever-growing cycle.
The urgency of addressing our dual energy and climate challenge is clear: to produce more energy while reducing emissions. Yet the solutions are multifaceted. Lucy is just one of many to identify this challenge and approach it through a technology-first view. Across America, millions of men and women who work in America's natural gas and oil, like Vin and his team, are testing, incubating, and scaling new ways to solve one of the world's biggest challenges.
The Innovation Center is really a breadth of different projects across the energy transition space, whether it's with emissions management, to carbon capture, to clean integrated power. For example, with carbon capture, we're currently working on developing testing capabilities here in-house to validate the performance of metal organic frameworks for direct air capture from the atmosphere. We're an energy technology company, and that's the core of our mission.
Technologies like Lumen, they are now able to localize and quantify a leak within 4 seconds. And that is automatically reported to their operators so they can go and abate those emission sources. And so that's a huge improvement from what was done in the past. So Lumen takes an electrical measurement and transduces that measurement to a leak rate, which is what the operator needs to know. And there is a network of sensors that all work together to be able to statistically deduce where that leak is occurring.
So our sensor is basically a sniffer where it's attached on these sites and allows the operators and user to be able to detect when these leakages occur from these assets. Oil and gas is going to be a pivotal part of the global energy demand moving forward, but it takes investing in these type of measures to take us to that journey to net zero.
While our future will be powered by these innovations made today, the question will always be, what's next? The challenge is huge, and the next idea must be too. Creating a workforce whose first question is, what's next?
So every kid, or even grown up, you want a job that you're excited to wake up in the morning and come to work. And I have the opportunity today that the cutting edge stuff that people use as trend lines and board meetings, etc., machine learning technology, we are truly using that in the data to make a difference in our industry, which is delivering energy to society.
You look back years ago on how we used to work and what people think of the industry, and it's just a different workforce today. Technology is evolving rapidly. With all the data we're collecting and how we're looking at this, and at some point when you put all that together, the idea would be able to see trends and what's failing and what's working and what's not working, and then be able to predict before something's going to happen or something's going to release.
The amazing thing about our industry is how it's constantly evolving. What we were doing 5-10 years ago is not what I'll be doing 5 years from now.
And when we look back, we'll wonder how we ever worked any differently.
Our industry is essential to supplying energy that makes modern life possible, while doing so in ways that tackle the climate challenge. Lowering greenhouse gas emissions, increasing efficiency, advancing technological innovation, building energy infrastructure, and more.
The importance of American-made energy is supporting the prosperity of my family, your family, and families all around the world. And we as an industry are committed to making that happen.
Here, here, and here. Solutions for more American energy with fewer emissions have been and will be created, not just by one, but by many. Not hundreds, but millions of men and women working at the center of technology innovation, shaping a reliable energy future. The question isn't if, but when.
The core of our energy needs are still going to be fulfilled by American oil and American natural gas. And what's great about coming to a place like Midland and Odessa and the Permian Basin is because I get to see and meet the people who are doing it every single day.
All forms of energy are coming from here, and I think education about that should get out to the rest of the country. I think a lot of people think of the Permian just as oil and gas, and that's really about it.
In Midland, Odessa, we say we all are in the oil field, regardless what business we're in, we're all in the oil field. And so every time the ebb and flow of anything like that, it impacts all of us. It impacts this restaurant, who walks in, who doesn't walk in. It impacts our ability to source groceries.
There's sometimes this idea of, Permian Basin, West Texas, dry West Texas, it's fine, we don't need them. But that's such a missed opportunity. We have the brightest men and women out here who are working day in and day out, who either grew up here, have moved here, so that they can work in the energy industry.
People have stepped up in amazing ways to make sure that we are all proud to be a part of West Texas and to operate and to live here.
And I would challenge anyone who comes out to West Texas, meet the guys and gals that are doing the hard work. They are working to provide a better life for their family. Who can argue with that?
Our nation's capital. Behind me, solutions to America's energy challenges are debated nearly every day. How do we make enough energy for our growing country? And how do we do it responsibly and affordably? These are big questions, and the answers are increasingly complex. That's why it's the American Petroleum Institute's charge to keep Washington, D.C. focused on U.S.-made solutions, not just the debate. Hi. I'm Amanda Eversole, Chief Advocacy Officer at the American Petroleum Institute. Natural gas and oil are produced by leveraging data, research, and new technologies that emerge every year. The way we made energy in 2013 isn't the way we're making energy today. And the way we'll do it in 2033? Well, that's what this industry is constantly defining and refining. As we just heard, there are new and better solutions being made each day. But laws and regulations, well, they change at a much slower pace. And that's why Washington, D.C. has to make sure that laws and regulations champion American innovators that are developing the best solutions to meet consumer needs. Our government must create a system in which new technologies can be implemented, investments are encouraged, and more products can be made for our growing population. But what does that mean for Washington? What actions must be taken? Well, we have a few ideas. Up next, you'll hear from American Petroleum Institute CEO Mike Summers on how Washington can make the U.S. not only secure in its energy, but a leader for the world's energy future. From the tundra of Alaska to the Gulf Coast of Louisiana, we have the force of millions working towards achieving this. The solution is here, and we must pursue it together.
There's no doubt, Washington, D.C. is an important place. But what happens in our nation's capital rarely gets its start there. The ideas, the innovation, the progress, all of that comes from the hardworking towns and cities, like right here in Midland, Texas. Across America, in any of the hundreds of communities that support the production, refinement, and distribution of energy, American energy is a cornerstone for our way of life. It runs our economy. It keeps our country safe. It powers our ability to innovate and do more than we ever dreamed possible. Over the last year, all of us have seen why energy policy really matters. We've seen it in our own lives, in our communities, and around the world. For decades, Washington, D.C. has debated policy pathways for reliable, affordable energy for everyone. But while the debate waged on, our industry stayed focused on delivering solutions. That's why I'm here today in Midland. The millions of men and women in America's natural gas and oil industry work hard every day and night to deliver reliable, affordable energy. And we stand ready to answer the call to produce more energy and to make it better, safer, and cleaner. But we need support from Washington. Either we strengthen our energy security or we become increasingly reliant on unstable regions of the world for our energy. The solution is here, but only if we chart a path for it to succeed. At API, we have a plan that champions the people who are innovating and advancing solutions for our energy future. It's a plan in 3 parts: make, move, and improve. It all starts with make, because the basics of America's energy challenges are pretty straightforward. When it comes to energy, Americans are suffering under the biggest supply imbalance in over a generation, between what we have and what we need to live our lives. And the government isn't doing enough to lessen it. Under the Biden administration, our government has leased fewer federal acres for oil and natural gas production than any other president since World War II, and has suggested no offshore leasing for years. That's despite the years it takes to plan, invest, permit, and develop energy, and projections that America and the world will need oil for decades to come. Experts say demand for global oil and natural gas will increase tremendously over the next 30 years. In 2023 alone, it will increase by 2.7 million barrels a day. And if America doesn't meet that demand, then that demand will be met by other countries that may not share our values or be reliable partners, countries that don't work to protect their environment and their communities. So the first step to solving energy challenges is to harness the full potential of American natural gas and oil production, and do it now by increasing access on and offshore. Our industry is already taking on the challenge, but the greatest achievements will require Washington to work alongside us too. Producing more energy counts for very little if we can't get it where it needs to go. And that's why we need to focus on how we move energy to where it's needed most. Today, it often takes more time and money to get permission to build a pipeline than it takes to actually construct the pipeline itself. And the consequences are real. Americans in New England sometimes pay up to 8 times more for energy than people in Appalachia, because the government won't approve a pipeline to move natural gas to states like Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts. We need our government to greenlight more pipelines to safely move our energy across the U.S. and more terminals to let ships bring our energy around the world. So let's do it. Let's invest in energy infrastructure, streamline the review process, and remove needless bottlenecks so we can harness the full potential of American energy. This industry is filled with so much potential, not just to meet demand, but to meet demand in ways that are safe for our environment. We've already created groundbreaking emissions reduction technologies, and more are on the way. Americans agree that taking care of this amazing land and reducing emissions is important. The question is, how do we work to improve together? It's not regulation alone. It's innovation. It's science and skill. It's innovators like the men and women who work here, whose ingenuity powered the shale revolution. By replacing much of the coal use with natural gas to make electricity, America lowered its CO2 emissions in the power sector more than any single one of Washington's climate policies ever has. We've reduced our CO2 emissions to some of the lowest levels in a generation, all while demand and consumption have continued to rise. We're innovating in our production processes to slash methane emissions intensity, a potent greenhouse gas, and we're working every day to find ways to bring them down even further. Not only can we lower U.S. emissions, but we can also capture some of the remaining emissions. To do that, we need stronger support for the implementation of carbon capture. And what about new fuels like hydrogen? Recent studies have shown that new fuels coming online show great promise in further meeting growing demand while also reducing emissions. We can fix this together. America has enough resources to supply ourselves and our allies for decades to come. This wasn't always the case. For For decades, presidents of every political party have put a premium on producing more energy in America to make our country more self-sufficient. They know it's not just good for our country, but for the world. Yet for some reason, policymakers in Washington are choosing another path, one with real consequences. Now is the time for Washington to help. Our industry is ready to do the work to make, move, and improve American energy. The solution is here, in America. Let's talk about that so-called energy transition for a minute. The truth of the matter is we're going to need all sources of energy in the future, right? We know that there are going to be a lot more renewables in the energy mix in the future because world population is going up by 2 billion people by 2050. And energy needs are expected to actually go up by 50%. So we shouldn't really talk about an energy transition. I like to talk about an energy addition.
I think we have to stop thinking about the Republicans and the Democrats, but remind ourselves that we're all Americans. We're all in the same boat, and that is to make our communities better. And just get over the quibbling and the fighting and realize that, you know, we're all from the same country here. We should all want the same thing, and that's moving this country forward.
So let me tell you about a program that we run at the American Petroleum Institute. It's a group called Energy Citizens. It's a grassroots network of energy employees and community leaders and people who want to be involved in this industry. So I would encourage you, after our conversation today, to go and join what I think is going to be a real movement for energy reform in this country. Well, I want to thank everybody for being here today. It's an honor to be here in Midland, Texas, and especially to be here in the Permian Basin, the most prolific basin in the world, and the one that I know is going to lead the future for us to continue to produce affordable, reliable, and ever cleaner energy for the world. Thanks, everybody.